be starting right now. Okay, we're good to go.
Okay, we're going to call the meeting of the Vermont Community Broadband Board to order on October 17th, 2022 at 12:05. Board members in attendance are Laura, Dan, and myself. Just making a note that Brian and Holly are absent today. For staff, we have Christine, Rob, Stan. Is Alyssa on?
Yes, I'm here.
Awesome, Alyssa. And anybody else from staff, Christine?
Yep, we'll introduce the two new staff members to you, Heron Herzog, and Adam Bornstein.
Excellent. Just for the record, we'll let the note taker, the minutes taker, know that those two new staff people are in attendance. Are there any changes to the agenda?
None from staff.
Okay, Dan or Laura? Okay, all right. So I'm going to make a motion. We approve the agenda as provided. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Dan is seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? The ayes carry. First item up for action is item 2, approval of the September 19th VCBB board meeting minutes. I'll make a motion to approve those minutes. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Laura seconded. Is there any discussion of the minutes of the 19th of September? All right, hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, any opposed? Ayes carry. I'm going to make a motion to approve the October 3rd meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion of the October 3rd VCBB meeting minutes? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Ayes carry. Okay, thank you very much. That those two items are done. And we turn it over to item 3, which is staff updates. And Chris, turn that over to you.
Yep, and normally, of course, we put this towards the end of the meeting, but since we have a couple new staff members, we wanted to introduce them to the board. We have Heron Herzog, who's going to be working for us doing communications. Heron comes with a pretty strong media background, and I'll let her say a little more about herself in a moment. And then Adam Bornstein, who you may have heard his name before. We've been trying to recruit Adam now for a long time. He's got an extensive and varied background in financing. He's going to be our broadband project developer, seeking and helping the CUDs to seek funds. So, and I should say that, when moving forward, we've talked to staff about how we'll organize these board meetings. Rob, myself, and Stan will be the mouthpieces, and we'll call on staff occasionally as needed if there's, but at the same time, staff will either attend the meeting or they'll watch it on YouTube at a later date. But you can continue to count on Rob, myself, and Stan to be the focal point for the board. But go ahead, Heron, why don't you introduce yourself, talk a little bit about your background and why you chose the job.
Okay. Well, thank you. I'm Heron Herzog. I trained as an attorney and also worked as a television reporter and anchor in several different markets, and took some time off. I have a family and kids, and coming back, this really is a unique opportunity, I think, to combine many of my experiences and training and interests into one thing. So I'm really excited to get to work with government and with the media, and just I think all of these things will be great. And working in another state capital, I spent some time with the governor's office in Wisconsin when I was in college, and in Minnesota when I was in law school, or right after law school when I started in TV. And so this will be my third capital to, I guess, virtually work in at this point, and maybe, get up there sometime. I also have a strong connection with Vermont. we have a place now in Ludlow. We were in Killington. My son's going to be attending Okemo Mountain School for the winter term this year, and my kids are all ski racers, and so we're up there every single weekend all winter, and had been, we spent the whole winter during COVID e-learning and just skiing and up there the whole time since we couldn't go back and forth. So we have a love for Vermont and just think this is just such a cool opportunity for me to do something that's so worthwhile. I also understand Vermont and the need for this. I understand the importance. So I'm really excited to help and to do what I can to get the word out and kind of translate some of this. I have to learn it all first. I'm realizing there's a lot to learn. Translate this for the general public and get the word out and help with whatever I can help with. I have a lot of different things in my background, so I'm always willing to jump right in with whatever needs to be done. And just really excited to, I guess, learn everything and get started.
So Heron is going to assist with press releases. She is going to edit every document that we issue to make sure it's as polished as can be. She's also going to be a resource for the communication union districts and providing some training on messaging and public outreach and all of those types of items. We're excited to have her.
Excellent. Welcome to the group, and we're very excited to have you join us. Can you, in terms of the technical aspect, in terms of broadband and whether it's the details of the technical side, do you dive into that in any capacity in your past, or?
I haven't, but I have a history of, I guess, as a reporter, mainly learning new things on the go every single day. And I'm starting, I've already started to some extent, but I'm going to start just reading, and as an attorney, reading and getting to know it so that I can explain it. One of the things I did a lot in my job as a reporter was get technical or, difficult to understand kind of subjects and try to translate them, make it simple. So everybody can understand. I think there's a real barrier there when we're talking about technical things and something like this that can be such a government and private and technical. There's so much to it. So I think there's a lot there. I'm a quick learner. So I will get right into that and be ready to go, hopefully right away.
Super. Really great to have your skill sets, and welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Okay, next to Adam.
Thanks, Christine. It's great to meet everybody. It's been about a year plus or so since I've been working with the VCBB, and Rob and Christine specifically when I was with Vermont Community Foundation and supported the team on the letter of credit that we got over the line, which I thought was pretty exciting back in the time. I come with about 25 years of international finance and development experience. I managed a private equity group in Asia for a while. I started out as a telecom analyst and have invested and implemented some wireless mesh and cable infrastructure throughout Asia. Currently, or most recently, I was with the Danish Red Cross and the Red Cross Federation, where I led the global team on innovative financing. And we did things around debt structures, and we used technology and looked at different ways to transform the Red Cross from a grant organization to one that really blends public-private financing. So it's great to be here.
Thanks, Adam.
Thank you. I should also mention to the board that we are expecting to bring on the new rural broadband technical assistance specialist before the next board meeting. We'll let you know when everything is worked out with the state processes, but I think you'll be very happy.
Excellent. Welcome, Adam. I won't ask you that question about your technical background because it sounds like you already are familiar with the telecom experience based on your prior positions. So welcome, and also look forward to having your expertise added to the group as well.
Okay, next I'll actually this logically transition right into the org chart, which I will share with you, a proposed org chart that we've been working on. So this is in your board packet. And so where we will end up, Stan, we're transferring Stan to me right away. So if you look, I'll have Stan and the Digital Equity Office Manager reporting directly to me. And also, we're going to be hiring an Administrative Services Coordinator. And that person will be a particular focus on budget and more detailed accounting, which I'm not waiting for. I'll talk later about the work I'm doing on the budget as well. And then, of course, we've got Rob, who's going to have the rest of the folks reporting to him as well. Any questions on the org chart?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Can you tell us about the positions which we have not discussed yet that you are aiming to hire for?
Yeah, these are all, you've approved all these positions last year.
Okay.
So there's nothing new here.
Chittenden County, RISI.
That's a contract that was also discussed and approved at a board meeting. It's just helping them with the business planning and
Great.
creating the CUD.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Any other questions? Well, I've got the chart up. Okay, I will stop my screen sharing.
Christine, I'm here. I'm just dealing with a dog issue, so I'm on mute right now.
All right, and next, I'm going to turn this over to Alyssa to talk about the dashboard. Now, understand this dashboard is in development. There's, we've committed to providing additional measures, but which will include the budget discussion at the next meeting. But go ahead, Alyssa, take it away.
Okay, great. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
And can you see the dashboard, the funding dashboard?
No.
Yes. If you have to, I think you have to click on it. It'll be in your lower bar. Just click on it.
It came up for me.
Yeah, it came up. It just took a few seconds to come up
All
for
right,
me.
I'll wait for another
Oh, I see
minute,
it.
but
Got it.
okay, great. So this is the updated funding dashboard. So Holly had asked to kind of just see where we're at with things in terms of funds available and funds that have been awarded. We over on the left side, you can see the total that we have so far from ARPA. So this is the money we have for the construction grants. On the right side, you'll see we've spent 82 million and some change for the construction grants. Below that is the pre-construction, and below that is the pre-project materials that we awarded. So in the dashboard, you can actually toggle between those different funding streams, and those are all attached to a spreadsheet, so those should be able to be updated as those grants are awarded. So the map is showing the green are representing the CUDs that have received construction grants. The yellow are the ones that are still only working with pre-construction right now. And then the other, are you able to see the broadband status?
Yes.
So this is the one Christine mentioned. As programs get off the ground, as construction gets started, we'll be able to keep adjusting this so that we can show a realistic display of, visualization of what is going on out in the ground. Right now, in terms of what is happening with our funding, a lot of the progress has been in the pre-construction phase. So we just started developing the metrics that we're going to use to show that progress, since it's these maps are more for the future when we're really looking at who's actually getting connected and what construction is complete. So those are the two dashboards we have right now. And like I said, we're kind of starting another third dashboard that will be able to highlight some of those pre-construction activities like make ready, mileage that's complete, ways to show what all the work that's been happening over this past year.
Yeah, and we're actually going to include planned versus actual addresses by quarter as well. So you can see status on that as well.
Yeah, I just want to make a comment. I think this is fabulous and love to see this in the packet each month or each time we have a board meeting, just as a reminder and update. This is great. Alyssa, kudos to pulling this together.
Thanks. Yeah, and I'm excited to really anything that we have in a spreadsheet, we can make into a dashboard. So as we keep moving forward and have more data, we can show whatever people want.
Great.
And this is ultimately, but we could back it up with, as Alyssa said, with spreadsheets and details. But this is really for Vermonters. So we're trying to make this as easy to understand for Vermonters. That the administration has requested this kind of a thing, but it really is, if you think about who our customers are, it's the Vermonters we're trying to serve. So this gives people a way to monitor our progress.
And it's helpful for board members just to we can look back quickly to say, if we have any questions about current status, we know where the money is and how things are going, miles served, all that stuff.
Right. Any other questions about dashboard?
I'm just curious, is it, I know this is possible, but I don't know if it's a big lift. Is it possible without a big lift to put in a time? So like 3 years down the road, can we look back and say, hey, this is where we were?
Yes.
And look where we are now. So you can.
Yep. So that would all be done in the mapping. So our online map system has that capability. And so we'll be able to look backwards as well. I can show that, I can plan to show that next time when we have something that like visually looks, you can really see the difference. But there's a tool that you can add to a map that kind of is a slider and kind of can show you where we were and slide it over and show where we are now. And I've been also thinking about forward timelines too, just because some of this work really is a lot of the progress I think is going to be happening in the next like 2 years. So just to show we are awarding grants right now, but so much of the work isn't going to happen for another 6 months or 12 months. And so just trying to find ways to visualize some of the planned work that is currently happening that we can't show exact actuals because it's out in the field happening, and some of that work is confidential and competitive in nature. And so I'm working with the team over at Stone to be creative to think about some of those displays.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Any other questions on the dashboard?
The dashboard.
Okay, I'll turn it over to Stan to talk about the guidance doc for insurance related best practices for broadband construction projects.
Good afternoon. Last week, the Department of Financial Regulation issued guidance for broadband service providers. It's in your board packet. It was a one-pager that's best practices for broadband providers in basically having the correct insurance coverage, which would include workers' comp, employer's liability, general liability, and auto coverage, and to ensure adequate coverage for the entire duration of the project that they work on. and to ensure that subcontractors have coverage as well. And it also encourages broadband service providers to contact the landowners of the projects that they're working on and the agency of transportation as well for any right-of-way permits that they may need. So it's pretty straightforward. In conjunction with that, the Agency of Natural Resources also issued guidance, which just basically says that providers should remove waste materials from the work sites, which, common sense. This is straightforward, and we'll be including these documents to any grants recipients in the future.
Thanks, Stan. I just want to emphasize and highly reinforce the common sense issue of picking up waste. The farm in Tunbridge was a catastrophe where a roll of wire was left out in a hayfield. The farmer did not know about the wire. It got embedded into the hay and was fed to the cows, and all the cows died. We just can't have that happen again. At my experience at Washington Electric Co-op, there was a contractor hired that left pole treatment preservative at the base of a pole in a bag. Goats got into it 20 years later. We have to emphasize this in the rollout of broadband. We can't have another catastrophe like the Tunbridge farm issue and the goat issue for Washington Electric Co-op. So I just want to really reinforce this for contractors that are working on these projects, that it's all the CUD should be talking about this in a very straightforward, clear, demanding way, actually, because especially the issue with the cows, where many of the cows died, we just can't have that happen again. So I just really want to reinforce that and call that particular item out.
Yeah, and actually, I'll piggyback on that. I'm starting tomorrow. I've set up meetings with the different construction companies in the region to have these discussions. One of the things that I've discovered as part of the workforce development work is that, the employees with one of the major construction companies, they get paid. I don't know if this is throughout the industry. I'll know more as I have these meetings. But since they're working on piece pay, there's a there's really a disincentive for cleanup, because you don't get rewarded for cleanup, right? You don't get rewarded for safety. You don't even, it's become a workforce development issue because you don't, even having an apprentice slows you down. So that whole piece pay structure, presents a challenge. But I will, I'll report back to the board after having all these conversations around, how do these industries keep, and I'm generalizing now because I don't know. I mean, maybe this one company is the only one that does piece pay. But, I remember when I started in manufacturing, we got rid of that early because of the disincentives, way back in the 80s. And I'm surprised that practice still exists. So, however, that's, again, I'm speaking, from a little bit of an ignorant position here. So I intend to do more work on this.
And one of the most effective things we can do, Christine, is to call this issue out to light and talk about it. Communication is super important, and just to remind all the contractors as they get started that they're accountable, and we're going to demand that they clean up.
Right.
So talking about it, bringing it to the forefront, just reminding everybody, just talking about it. It's like a tailboard meeting for an electric utility. You got to have some communication around this piece, and all the contractors and the subcontractors need to be aware.
Agreed. Okay, moving on to the parking lot. I will share my screen again.
Sure. To help you with that, I need your permission to allow assistant personal results on this.
Sorry about that.
Where's that personal assistant? I want one.
Yeah, I need a personal assistant too as well for this, but hang on, let me share my, get back to share the screen. Okay, can you see the screen? Is it parking lot? I'll give you a second.
There it is.
So we're still planning on the VCBB's approach to mapping a strategy for challenging the FCC on the 14th. I think I got to change this 31st. I made a commitment for Kristen Bringa, and I don't think Kristen. I think I missed this when I changed that. If you're on, tell me what a better date is for this.
Well, I think I'm here.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
I think that we have a high level plan, which we've kind of had in the pipeline for several months now. But in terms of getting a comprehensive audit program together, I mean, that's something that's going to take a little bit of time, and it's going to be in conjunction with Guidehouse and also getting, the construction up and running and just seeing what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. So, high level, we can really do it anytime, but for a comprehensive audit program, I think that's going to be ongoing.
Okay, why don't we plan on doing a high level and then come back to the board when we talk about more details? Does that work for the board? Or do you want to wait for the details?
Yeah, we can do that in a two-phased approach, high level and then a detailed.
And okay, thanks. That's what we'll do. And then the delegation to the future board meeting. We talked about this morning at our huddle, and it makes more sense to do this after the election. Is it okay to do that after the election, board?
I have no problem with that. Laura or Dan?
I think that's fine.
Yeah, no
Okay.
problem.
Okay.
Great. Workshop on uniform guidance. I know that was being set up. Is Kristen or Rob, has that been set up yet by Guidehouse?
We've had some emails going back and forth, but they haven't given me a date. The person on their side who's in charge of uniform guidance was out for most of October, I think. So they were supposed to be getting back to me with more dates, but I need to follow up with them again.
Okay, and this issue of enforceability, Stan's been out. I'll be working with him. We will work closely together over the next week to address this and get some language that can be put into the grant agreements. I don't know what our powers are or what our limits are, but we are talking about this. Finalize subsequent overbuild policy. I think that's Stan. I think you said that's really ready to go, right? We just need a vote.
I'm going to be. I have some conversations to have over the next week or two, but I should hope to present a new policy at the next meeting.
Yeah, so it'll either be the 31st or the 14th, depending on what our agendas are. But and then we're going to talk about the organizational meeting later today.
Okay, great. Any questions on the parking lot? All right, hearing none. Let's move on to item 4, which is Waitsfield Champlain Telecom. You want to kick us off, Christine?
Yeah, so we reviewed this last week. I apologize for sending it updated on Friday, but I got, I'm kind of the numbers person and got through the numbers in detail on Thursday. But then in a meeting with CTC, we discovered there was some confusion on CTC's part. So I held off doing, a final recommendation till Friday. But the numbers didn't necessarily change for our end. There were some details that changed. But overall, this recommendation is consistent with what we all staff has thoroughly reviewed their proposal, and we're going to turn it over to Waitsfield Champlain Valley Telecom. But the key here is, again, we go back to the cost per passing. If you look, if you look at their cost per passing, the grant, I kind of, what I do is I kind of benchmark all of the CUDs in terms of what are we paying from a grant cost per passing in order to get this done. We know that the NEK is going to have a much higher grant cost per passing because of its density. So therefore, we're trying to save money in some of the areas. And this is an area where we save money again, because we have we have an average of 51.56 per passing grant cost per passing to achieve our goals in the state. And this number is 33.53. So it's well below the 51.56. And of course, Waitsfield Champlain Valley Telecom has a good reputation in the state. We've talked to CAPI in the past. They're happy with their performance. So, we are recommending that the board approves this grant application. And at this point, I'll turn it over to Waitsfield Valley. I think Roger Nishi will be speaking. Is Roger here?
I am on.
Okay. Roger, take it away.
Rob, did you get my email? Can you share the screen in the document that I sent you? I'm having some difficulty sharing from my screen.
Yeah, I think Alyssa's going to take on the sharing, I believe.
Super.
You good to go, Alyssa?
Sorry, I missed that. I will be. Hold on.
So I'll just start talking as this is pulling up our document. But I wanted to share that Waitsfield and Champlain Valley Telecom created a universal service plan for all non-CUD towns. And in doing so, we combined Bolton with all the other towns that are non-CUDs. And we did this for two reasons. It's easier to run financial modeling for all the non-CUD towns together. And in addition, if we apply as one, and this was at the suggestion of Christine, if we put them all together, it will be easier to review in the future, and it will be easier to do federal reporting and everything involved with having a grant, as opposed to having a Bolton sitting out there by itself and also having all the other CUDs. It will take that review time from 2 documents to 1. So they did that. I think I did that at Christine's suggestion, and I think Rob and everyone at the VCBB are happy with that. In terms of our build with this universal service plan, we're going to be passing 7,359 locations, and of those 7,359 locations, those are all on copper today. You can go to the next one, Alyssa.
Sorry, Alyssa can't find it. I'm trying to take over here. So
Okay.
Can everybody see this right now, or I should go to the
Yes.
slideshow one?
We can see it.
Okay.
So, and of those 7,359 locations, they're all on copper, so they're all considered under the new definition underserved, but they're all locations that are 25/3 to 100 over 20. All of those locations will get fiber at some point in time, but we're really going to be focusing on the 3,221 unserved and underserved and try to get them the fiber services first, so that they can get to speeds that they're not achieving today. Rob, can you go to the next slide? So the total cost of the universal service plan here is the 39 million. And of that, we're estimating that we're going to request grants of about 13 million. Now in that, there's approximately 4.6 million that we're estimating we could possibly receive through futures BEADS funding. We don't know what that amount is going to be. If it's less, we'll request less. If it's more, we'll request more to help bring down the overall cost of our build. Next slide, Rob. So this is the cost of the current project. And what you'll note on this is that we're taking the grant funding and we're applying it to the locations that we've deemed unserved and underserved. And with this ratio here, it is 60% grant funding and approximately 42% funding by Waitsfield and Champlain Valley Telecom. So that meets the guideline that Christine goes through as she's looking at the various applications.
Hey, Roger,
Next
this
slide.
is Patty.
Uh-huh.
Can I confirm the amount that you're asking for the grant funding is $8,348,243?
Rob, if you can go to the next slide, I'll clarify that a little bit. The total amount that we're requesting for the non-CUD areas is a number that you just stated, but 421,000 has been previously approved in the Bolton. So really with this application, we're requesting the remaining $7,927. And in doing so, but once again, go ahead, Christine.
Can I interject here? I think, yeah, this has been a little bit of confusion between Waitsfield and us. I think the board, ultimately what we're going to do is we're going to take their grant from Bolton and modify the total. So I just want to make it clear that, you know, as Roger said, you've already approved the 421. The grant itself will say 8,348,243. The board is approving 8,384,223, but with an understanding that we've already issued 420,094.
It'll be a single grant agreement, which makes it easier for reporting and keeping it from one funding source as opposed to splitting it, since we don't have a signed grant agreement yet. So it's to make it easier for everybody.
So when we go to take action on this, the request is that we actually approve 8.348243, right?
That is correct.
Okay.
Okay, sorry, Roger. I just want to make sure that's clear.
No, that's helpful, Christine. I now understand it better also.
Yeah, I get it.
Rob,
don't worry. Go ahead.
Rob, if you could move to the next slide. So on this, what's going to happen is Bolton, we're going to work on the entire area of Bolton first, and we've actually started that, and we're quite well along with that. Then we're going to move on to Charlotte and do their entire town. Now, in both those locations, I've listed the number of unserved and underserved here. And so in Bolton, we're focused on the 271 underserved, and in Charlotte, the 239 that are underserved. But all that being said, there's an additional 144 that are on copper today that are considered served that are going to get converted in Bolton, as well as approximately 700 in Charlotte above the 239 that are considered served today that are going to get converted to fiber. And then with the rest of the money, we haven't determined what areas we're going to serve yet. So in 3, we say areas with a high percentage of unserved and underserved. We'll also take into consideration the condition of the plant, and if it's sequenced well in our overall builds, when we're looking to find the other locations and areas of towns that we're going to be building to. And this
Roger,
was really about. Go ahead, Rob.
Sorry. I was just going to ask for one clarification. With the town of Bolton, there were a few addresses that aren't in your service territory, but you are going to be providing service to those.
I was going to get that shortly, but I'll go and answer that. Actually, those are areas that Consolidated has said that they're going to build to. Now, I don't know the timing of that, but they did commit to that in a prior discussion with them. So that moves us on to the next slide. Before we get to what I just discussed, each town did make a contribution. Bolton had a significant contribution of 200,000, and Charlotte had the amount that's available to match from the VCBB. So they committed 43,830. Next slide, Rob. So here's where we get into your question, Rob. In towns that Waitsfield and Champlain Valley Telecom does not currently serve with its own network, there's sort of 3 options there that's occurring. Some, such as St. George, they're already considered served because they have Comcast service today as a provider. So those are considered served. Then there are those areas that the incumbent provider will decide to build. And that's the case of Waterbury, where they're picking up part of Bolton through their Waterbury build, and they've committed to do that. The third is when there's part of a town that we don't currently serve, that's part of another telco's area. And in that instance, if the telco has said they're not going to build there, or they've said that when they get there, they'll get there. So what I mean by that is, as we build out our network, and this is the case in Charlotte, as we build out our network, when it comes time to build to the area that's currently served by Consolidated, if they haven't built there yet, we will do so. And that's something that I have discussed with the people at Consolidated. The second
Laura
item,
Laura has
go
her
ahead.
hand up. Check
Sure.
in with Laura.
Well, Patty, I actually, if I might, I'm actually interested in the rest of the answer to this question before I ask my question, which is related. So, but Roger might answer if I might.
Okay, pop in, both Dan and Laura, pop in during the presentation as you would like for questions.
Okay, thank you.
So the second part of this slide in the other is the grant conditions. Now, realizing that there were some conditions placed upon us and things that we needed to do to meet the VCBB's request, we're actually working on a set of same conditions that are similar to what Consolidated and Southern Vermont have put on the table. And I'm currently working on that with the Maple Broadband parties. When that's complete, all the conditions that we put in place there, we will do the same type of reporting of all those conditions, and we'll make them available to the VCBB for review.
Okay, so Roger, here's my question. You have 2 areas, maybe you have 3 areas. So you have an area that you are building out that is Maple CUD.
Yes.
You have an area that you are building out that is your existing network, that building out in towns that you are existing in, building out to the last mile there. And then you're also, this is my question, building into Bolton, which you are not in currently.
No, we are currently in Bolton.
Okay. So I'm just I'm trying to understand, you're working with within your you're working within your existing territory, and you are working with Maple to expand your territory. Are you working in any other CUD or non current Waitsfield Champlain territory?
So let me explain it the way I explain it, and hopefully this answers your question. Maple Broadband towns are in our Addison County area. So that would be the towns such as Addison, Panton, Weybridge, and Bridport. Now they're towns, and we currently have the infrastructure there. They're currently Waitsfield and Champlain Valley Telecom customers. We're going to be building there, and that's what the previous grant was approved for.
Right.
Now, the second part is the non-CUD towns, and that's what I'm requesting the funding for today. So I look at them as 2 distinct areas. Now, where there could be some confusion is in the Maple Broadband area, they're actually building out their own areas that we don't serve today, but we're going to be their service provider.
Right.
Through agreement. So did that answer your question, or am I?
Well, that answers my question about Maple. I'm more concerned right at this moment about the non-Maple towns that you are building in, and just making sure that I understand. So, and if I understand if they're in other CUDs or in proposed CUDs. So does the Chittenden CUD, is that inclusive of Charlotte or Heinsberg or any of those towns?
So all the towns that are part of this request, which would include the 2 towns you just named, have not joined a CUD. We've had discussions with them, and they're comfortable with us building out our network.
Okay, and so Rob, I have a question for Rob and Christine, which is, who are the towns that are looking at building out or forming a CUD in Chittenden County?
So the towns that are voting in November are Shelburne, South Burlington, Essex Junction, Essex, and Williston. And there's several other towns that are considering joining once it is initially created, but they are not Waitsfield towns.
Okay,
The Waitsfield towns are covered via this proposal. And this is a universal service plan for the entire Waitsfield service area.
okay. So that's great. I have a bunch of questions, Patty, so I'm just gonna go until you tell me to stop, okay? Roger, I heard you and I can't remember exactly what you were talking about. You were talking about some unknown addresses. You weren't sure what you would use. I think what I heard, which is probably not what you said, is that some of the funding would be going towards addresses that you weren't clear on yet. They might go, depending on where XYZ. If you could kind of restate that and tell me a bit more about what's going on there.
So in this portion of or this grant request, there are 1,200 homes that we've identified as unserved and underserved. And so what's not in Bolton and Charlotte, there are 600 and another 90 when we take away the Charlotte numbers of that 1,200. And of those 690, we're going to identify areas that are underserved, where they're the most underserved, where the condition of the copper is poor, and where we can help the most unserved and underserved. Those locations or areas or construction areas have not been identified yet, but we're in the process of doing so. And in doing this, we're also looking to try to equally spread some of the work out amongst the other non-CUD towns that aren't Bolton and Charlotte. So we'll look to do some in Waitsfield, maybe some in Richmond, some in Bristol. So we'll be looking at different areas to actually do these builds, and I would like to spread it out. We'll see what our engineering comes up with.
Yeah, if you don't mind interjecting, Laura, at this point,
Yeah.
just for clarification, because I'm not sure I have it clear. WCBT is going to come in for a phase 2 application. So my question for Roger is, what that whole sequence you just discussed, is that part of the phase 2, or are you including that in the phase 1 application, that discussion?
So what I just discussed is part of the phase 1. By the time we come back to phase 2, which will be the BEAD funding, as I see it, we'll have a better idea of all the rest of the locations that we'll need to build to serve everyone.
And so, as we put in our grant requirement, we're requiring essentially a 24-month plan. So this is Roger's 24-month plan. What he's saying is you come back with the next plan that closes the loop on the rest of those addresses.
And is that consistent with what we have requested from the CUDs in terms of universal service plans?
Yes.
Do they have we provided that level of flexibility? Okay. So Roger, in Bolton, I'm still confused. So I know that we consolidated is in part of Bolton. And so this application does or does not provide for every unserved address in the town of Bolton.
All of the customers that we currently serve today, there's 10 or 12 locations that adjoin Waterbury that it will be more convenient and more cost effective for Consolidated to build to.
Yeah,
Okay.
and Consolidated, there are also RDOF locations won by Consolidated. So that's why
Okay.
the board over the summer approved the universal service plan for Bolton.
Okay. So in the CTC review, I was just going through staff review. There were a couple of pieces that I had questions about, which were in 5, I think it was 5.1, that there was no collaboration with either a CUD or municipality documentation of that provided in this grant application. And I'm trying to go back through the actual application, but Roger, did you provide any letters of support or documentation of support for this in the universal service plan from any of the towns or CUDs that are a part of this?
Yes, the vast majority of the towns did have a letter which, of support. There were 2 communities that did not, but we're working very closely with them. And I just didn't get them in time for this actually, before we're discussing it. But we talked to, it's town of Waitsfield and Fayston, which is right where our main offices are. And I just ran out of time and did not get those.
Okay, and I'm just gonna flag that that's a big deal for me. To have all of the municipalities kind of formally supporting it, though it's not required. This is an unusual application and we're not gonna see a lot like this around the state out of non-CUD areas. And so not having a letter of support from the municipality is kind of a big deal for me. The other was around in the CTC evaluation, if somebody can explain this to me, I don't know if Telus is on. It says that there's no verification, I guess, of the universal service plan. I have to go back and look. And so here's what I'm worried about. I'm worried about, we don't have a public entity here in terms of a CUD. I would like the VCBB to have some verification. Like, how is this going to work in terms of the universal service plan? So which public entity is going to ensure that this universal service plan is being built out? And maybe you could just tell us what that no means. Do you understand where I'm at? Should I go into the document and find it?
Yeah, can you
No.
tell me exactly where you are?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I mean, I have the bigger answer in the end, but go ahead and tell us and explain your comments.
Let's see. So I am, shall we continue and then I'll come back to it? I'm looking for it, but. Yeah. It's in 5.1. See if it's in 5.
Laura, I can actually partially answer my thoughts on that.
Okay.
Since this is a conventional loan, we will be communicating with Christine and Rob and Alyssa about all of our builds that are going on. And then once certain construction areas are completed, we'll be going to them to review, and they will be reviewing each and every job before we get paid and funded. So there are some hooks in place in which the VCBB is going to make sure that we are building to everyone.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's entirely
And
reimbursement based.
Roger, I just want to make sure, you said that this is a conventional loan. I want to make sure we're clear. This is not a loan. Is that right?
No, it's conventional grant. Yes, it's conventional grant.
Okay. Let me see if I can find it.
Yeah, that would make it a lot different that you're going to pay it back.
You're more than welcome to, but
We're going to have to go get some funding to make sure the builds get built in the time frame as requested. So,
and no commitment letter from Consolidated on Bolton, is that right?
I do.
Bolton was already established that they're going to be building it out via their RDOF bid. There's always the chance that CV Fiber gets there first, but the board did decide that was enough when we approved the grant over the summer.
The pre-construction.
No, this was a construction grant that we approved. We approved Bolton separately, and since we haven't signed a grant agreement yet, we're combining it all together to reduce paperwork and to make sure that it's coming from a single funding source rather than split between ARPA and ARPA Capital. But that universal service plan was already approved and funded.
Okay, so I found the place, tell us. It's 3.2. And it says there is a timeline for achieving universal service. Yes. Are there any attached documents supporting the applicant's commitment to universal service? So that was what had kind of caught my attention, and is the basis of my questions.
Yeah, so that's an error on my part, but they did submit a universal service plan and they also verified the application. So they submitted all the details around the universal service plan. So that's an error on my part. I can resubmit this and correct that.
Okay, thank you. And Christine, what is the portion of this grant that is reimbursement versus going right out the door?
Oh, this is all reimbursable.
Okay, great, thank you. And Roger, what is the investment by Waitsfield Champlain in the same area? Oh, did Roger freeze? Yes, he did.
Yeah, I have the answer.
I have it here
Yeah,
as well. 26,348,817. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, Roger, but that's what I'm reading off the slide as WCBT investment.
Yeah,
No, that is correct, Rob.
Okay, and this I think is my last question, Patty. Roger, how long do you think it would take you to get the letters of support from Waitsfield and Fayston? Oh, you're muted.
Mute.
You're muted. You're still muted. Now you're unmuted. Yes.
Okay, if that's going to be a contingency, I will have them in a matter of days.
So it is a contingency for me. I don't know if it will be for anybody else, but that is something that I would just like the towns, the municipalities that you're working with, just have that extra level of, yes, we know this is happening and we're excited and fantastic. Waitsfield Champlain. That's it for me. Thanks, Patty.
Thank you, Laura. What were the towns again, Roger, that have not given you the letter yet? Waitsfield
And Fayston.
Fayston. Okay, thank you. I have some questions that I'm not sure would be keen to answer or Roger, but the question I'm trying to sort through is, so this is an effort not with the CUD, it's separate, correct? Okay, the pot of money that we have available, what I'm trying to make sense of, if we award these dollars to Waitsfield Champlain Valley Telecom, does that interfere with any of the other CUDs?
No.
Available dollars?
No, not at all. This is based on the amount that's available to them is based on the same allotment that we did for all this, to figure out the amount available to all CUDs, but the ultimate amount that we can provide is up to the board, but this is within those limits.
So if we're granting dollars to a non-CUD, it doesn't short any of the CUDs. I want to be perfectly clear about that.
Correct. It does not short any of the CUDs.
And just to confirm that, Roger, you're eventually going to come in for about 39.3 million. Is that accurate?
That's the total cost of his construction. He's
That's
coming in for about 13, I think you said. 13.
Yeah, right now we're at about 13 million, but that depends on the amount of BEADS funding that's going to come through later.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. But you'll be coming in for another grant of roughly another 7 million and change.
Right now it's 4.6, but if $7 million is available, we would like to partake in that.
Okay, all right.
And this is Rob. I also want to clarify one thing. I shouldn't be saying allocated. It's more of what we've calculated based on our formula as available for each of the towns. Just to be clear.
Okay. But both Rob and Christine, you can confirm we have funds available to do this, and this will not short any of the other CUDs.
No, it won't.
Okay.
That's why yeah.
All right, that was my question.
Okay. So I have a question, Patty, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead, Dan.
I may not have been tracking here properly or reading these correctly, but I thought some of this was interwoven. I'm looking at the towns with Maple. It's separated completely? These are not Maple towns?
These are not Maple towns.
None of them. Okay. How much or is any of this interwoven with previous fiber grant, like BTOP fiber that was put out years ago, if any?
So in those areas, those are considered served, so we would not have included those in these calculations or these numbers. And there was only a small portion in this, the non-CUD towns in Bolton, and that was taken into consideration in our design.
Okay, so you weren't able to leverage that fiber that was out there for a while to reach some other neighborhoods, perhaps, that doesn't exist in your network?
Some of it we partially were, because I know in what we provided to CTC, there were some areas in which there was some additional space on in some tubes that we were going to be utilizing.
Okay, so you were able to leverage older, albeit not a lot older, but some fiber that was through grant dollars earlier to pick up some areas.
Yes.
All right. And maybe I'm not reading this right, but Christine, in your letter of recommendation and the application form, the dollars don't line up. Am I reading that wrong? They're off by like $10,000 average cost per mile.
Well, I calculated 34,076. And yeah, I know where the error is. This application itself, if you take the total funding that we have and divide it by the number of miles, it's 245 miles. Oh, I think I know what you're saying. I think I used the grant fund as opposed to the construction fund. That's an error on my part. In other words, the total construction, I should have divided the total construction. I think that was about 49,000 or something like that. Do you remember what the number? Yeah.
Okay, so the application form shows 48.
Yeah, that's right. That's the correct. Yes, I'm sorry, I made an error. I actually used their grant fund to calculate it. The application has the exact total construction costs. That was, sorry about that.
Okay. And the form shows a $5,300 average cost per passing. But I think we talked about
that's what I do for us, our purposes, I use the grant cost per passing to standardize how we're doing across. It's for us, what's the big cost for us? It's the grants we're funding. So I do grant cost per mile rather than total construction cost. I mean, grant cost per address, per passing. You follow?
Okay. Yeah, thank you. That's helpful. That's very helpful.
So, Patty, I have another question. I have two actually. Roger, I'm sorry. Did you say, did Maple weigh in on this at all? Did they provide any support for this or not thereof? They probably didn't because it's not in their territory, but you're still muted. Sorry.
I'm sorry. They did not, but I did not request any since none of these areas are in their territory.
Okay. Yep. That makes sense to me. So Christine and Rob, we have two areas of the state where CUDs have not formed. One of those areas made a lot of sense because it had a fiber to the premise and then a pretty active, and the other area is up in this region. And we know that there is a CUD that is likely forming in the Chittenden County area. So my question for you is, when we're looking at this, of course, I would like to see all the towns as CUDs. We can't require that, but we certainly would not want to take an action that weakens the development of another CUD. And so that, my questions before about that Chittenden County CUD coming in, is this something that you all have considered, have thought about? Are you talking with Waitsfield Champlain? You know, this, again, you know, the goal is not universal service alone. It is also public accountability. And so those CUDs are preferable. So have you given some consideration to that and what this affects, how this affects the potential Chittenden County CUD?
Sure, I can touch on that in several ways. First, the Chittenden County towns that have been interested are the ones where they don't have a provider that has expressed the goal of universal service yet to all of their residents with fiber. So there's been minimal discussions with the Waitsfield towns, to towns served by Waitsfield. Those towns have said over and over again, they're all set. I think it's testament that there's the Waitsfield service territory is surrounded by CV fiber, by Maple, and by this one. And there are towns that are happy with going with their hometown provider. So we can't force towns to do anything. They've had the opportunity. And I think with those letters of support, the fact that several of the towns have already pledged some funds, I'm entirely comfortable that this is the way to go.
Yeah,
So my
that would
question,
be same answer. Yep.
yeah, I mean, my question was around thinking about the formation of the Chittenden County CUD and whether or not this grant award would potentially affect that.
I
would
think
not
the
neg-
Chittenden County CUD, I think the Chittenden County CUD is being informed with the understanding of what's happening in WCBT and that there's not interest in those towns joining.
Okay, and I just remind everyone that as much as we like Waitsfield Champlain, they are a private company that could be sold tomorrow.
Yep.
Okay, thank you very much.
So one thing I want to note about Roger's proposal here is some of the oversight, some of the conditions, some of the performance standards that they are building in. They have agreed to everything they build in for Waitsfield will be built into service in their own towns as well as with the other CUDs. So we are making progress for having some oversight and accountability across all of those towns.
I don't understand what you said, Rob, so I'm gonna need that in fifth grade language, please.
Sure. So one of the conditions that was put on to the grant to Maple for the towns served directly by Waitsfield, where Waitsfield builds and owns the infrastructure, is to agree to certain performance standards and customer service requirements and oversight requirements. Waitsfield is planning to offer and adopt those standards to all of the towns that they serve that aren't in a CUD and across all the other CUDs where they are the IS. They are mixing up the terminology here, but they're the partner.
Okay, and so I heard you say Waitsfield is planning to offer and adopt those. Is the VCBB planning to require those as part of the grant requirement, the grant?
Yes.
Yep.
Perfect.
Yeah, I was going to ask Roger that very question about a service quality standard similar to Southern Vermont.
Yes, that's what we're working from, and which
Okay.
is similar to what we're working on with Maple.
Okay, so I'm going to add that to the I've got two contingencies I've written down once we get to a motion. One is that the minimum service quality standards similar to Southern Vermont CUD are incorporated, and also that letters of support from Waitsfield and Facein municipalities are provided. Are there any other questions?
Patty, are you planning to have a vote at this point?
I'm comfortable with a vote if
Okay.
Dan or you're comfortable.
So I would say that I would just remind the board that Southern Vermont CUD passed as a 2-1 vote out of this board. I voted against that. And that I see is a little bit different because that was with CUD. This is not with a CUD. So I see I see our hands being a bit more tied here than they were with Southern Vermont, but I'm not prepared to vote yes, even though it's not required until we see those letters of support from Waitsfield and Facein. So I'd prefer to wait until the next meeting. And Telus has said maybe a correction on their evaluation. Christine has said maybe a correction on some of the numbers.
Well, it was only a number in my executive summary. It certainly doesn't impact any of the contractual agreements, so I would not put that in as a report. And I would encourage the board to go ahead and vote anyhow, because, you know, it just delays it further. And I don't think the vote's going to change at all for the next board meeting.
I'm sorry, is there, I'm going to ask then. So I've asked for 2 letters. Other letters have been submitted. Roger, is there since this is a reimbursement grant, is there some problem with a 2-week delay on having an approval here? Will some harm?
Well, anytime there's a delay, it's just a matter of, we have some areas where we can actually start doing some additional installs and then we can get it going right now. So any delay, any time in the process, delays construction or getting customers to service that could have them pretty quickly.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would add too that my concern is having to, again, go through this with another 2 board members. And, you know, the amount of work that is required for the board meetings, when it seems like this is, you know, if the board puts a contingency in place, we're going to honor that contingency. So at least we don't have to go, you know, retread old ground again.
So, Patty, can we approve this, Patty Stan, approve this grant request contingent upon Waitsfield Champlain providing those 2 letters of support?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I would be comfortable doing that.
Okay.
And so I will make that motion.
And that's Waitsfield and Fayston. Those are the only 2 towns we're talking about, right?
Those are the only 2 towns, Roger, that have not provided letters of support, right?
Yes.
Okay. And Laura, would a friendly amendment to your motion to approve Waitsfield Champlain Valley Telecom's grant request? I'm going to name the amount.
Right.
$8,348,243. Also contingent on meeting the minimum service quality standards that we've set up, similar to the Southern Vermont CUD. If you would accept those.
I would accept those amendments, yes.
I will second Laura's motion.
This is Rob, but just say one thing, we may want to say that this replaces the previous grant approved for Bolton, just to be clear on the record.
Yeah, good idea.
All right, also,
And then the amounts add up, right?
okay. Does that make sense, Laura?
I need a minute for it to click into my head.
So, and it might be helpful if we can put that slide back up where it had the value of $421,094 that we've previously approved. Not that one. There it is, right there. So if we approve $8,348,243 in total, that replaces the $421,094.
Yes, this supersedes the previous.
So, and why, I'm sorry, I apologize. I was looking through the CTC evaluation. Why are we not just going for the 7927?
Well, because then we have to do 2 separate grant agreements, and it, you know, it creates a level of unnecessary work when we can address it all in one grant agreement. Because, you know, Bolton's just another town, and we have not had a signed grant agreement yet. So all we need to do is modify the existing grant agreement. Otherwise, he has to do 2 sets of reports and 2 sets of federal reports. It doubles the amount of work.
So we don't have a signed grant agreement yet for Bolton.
No, we do not.
Right, okay. And that would have been with the Universal Service Fund that we were referencing as having been approved by the board.
Yes.
Multiple times during this meeting today, but we don't have a signed grant agreement on that. We're gonna pull that back. Got it.
So procedurally, given that the board the VCBB took action on Bolton separately. Do we have to do something differently here on this action?
Well, I think we're just saying to call out this supersedes the previous Bolton agreement. Yeah.
Okay, all right, before we take action on the full grant request, I think what I'd like to do is take action first on the Bolton. This is an administrative motion. The previously approved grant allocation of $421,094 to Bolton, that at this board meeting, we are going to replace that with the action that we're going to take with Waitsfield Champlain Valley Telecom, which will include Bolton. So we're going to replace it, but I think we need to take separate actions here. And Stan, you might be able to help us.
Rescind.
Yeah.
Rescind the Bolton. Okay, let's do that. That way this is super clean.
So what do we do with the motion on the table, Madam Chair?
I'd like to table it.
Okay.
We haven't voted on it yet. It's seconded, but we've taken action and voted on it. So I'd like to take action. I'm going to make a motion that we rescind the Bolton grant request to Waitsfield Champlain Valley Telecom that was issued at a previous VCBB meeting of $421,094. Is there a second?
Second.
Excellent. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? The ayes carry. Okay, we're going to go back to the previous motion on the floor.
Can we get that read?
Yes. Does anybody have it written down?
I'll take an attempt at it. That you're going to, the request from staff is to approve the amount of, trying to find it here, somebody tell me what that amount, $8,348,243.
$243 to Waitsfield Champlain Valley Telecom.
Right, with the following contingencies. One, that they provide a quality of service plan identical to Southern Vermont,
Or at least meeting the standards of that of Southern Vermont CUD.
Yep.
You're welcome to exceed those.
And the second is that we have letters of support for all towns, which include Waitsfield, Fayston.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. Then that action has received a motion and a second. Is there further discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? The ayes have it. Congratulations, Roger.
Thank you. We really appreciate this, and we appreciate your faith in our efforts to get the job done. And you will be receiving the letters post haste.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Roger. Good work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Roger.
Thank you, board.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, we are on now to number 5 on the agenda, non-ARPA funded grant programs. Christine, do you want to tee this up?
Sure, that's Rob, you taking that one?
Yes, certainly. Sorry, I was muted there. So these are two programs that one predates the pandemic. That's how far back it goes. The other one is funded by Northern Borders Regional Commission. We haven't acted on these programs since we wanted to make sure we got the pre-construction and the construction program out the door, and there hadn't really been that much of a demand at this point. But we want to get the RFPs out there since we are hearing rumblings of demand, especially for the broadband financing program. So the broadband financing program, it was $1.5 million in general funds. So one-time appropriation that was made, and its purpose was to help the CUDs leverage the VITA broadband infrastructure program. which required cash equity. So I know this is like way back, the way back time, but there are other programs, other loan programs where this could assist the CUDs in leveraging other funds. The way the language is written in the appropriation, unfortunately, it can't be matching funds for grant programs, but it can be used for whether it's a VITA program or a USDA loan or any other innovative financing that's out there. So that's the first program. It's limited to 400,000 per CUD. We have a few more CUDs now than we did when it was first created. The second program was funded by the Northern Borders Regional Commission. It was a state capacity grant. It was for a single $1.2 million grant to help encourage public-private partnerships between the CUDs and a private provider or another entity. It's meant to leverage additional funds and speed up the deployment of universal broadband. So what I'd like to ask of the board is to authorize the staff to complete the RFPs and release the RFPs for both. I do have the draft RFP ready for the broadband financing now and could have the other one later, but it's whatever the board decides of whether they want to go through line by line or pass that along to the staff. Either is fine with us. I'd also like to ask the board to delegate to the staff the ability to approve the grants for the broadband financing program. This is the much smaller one where it's, okay, they have a loan application, they need thousands of dollars as a down payment of it. It gets them a cheaper interest rate, allows them access to a program, things like that, where it's pretty much by the book in terms of what is allowed. That I think it would be helpful for the board to have discretion to act on that and to be able to act quickly on that rather than bringing it through the whole board process. When it comes to the larger grant, the 1.2 million, the public-private partnership challenge, I think that's something that we do need the board's insight on. Because of the sensitivities around some of this, much of it's likely to be in executive session. I can pull information on both up on the screen if it's helpful for the board or people at home, or we can just talk it through.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in here to start the Q&A on this one. I'm feeling just like not clear on what we're doing here. I know you want to move fast and you want to get things done, and I'm respectful of that, but I'm just feeling very unclear. That's just my general perspective at this point.
I can clarify a little bit right now. It's more we want to get these RFPs out. That's what it comes down to, and we feel that these programs were transferred to the board, so we want the board involved in it. We're trying to figure out where the line is between what we can do as staff in terms of releasing these, or what that the board wants to be involved in. And my proposal of how to work it for this one is it's on the screen now, what's above it, in terms of how we deal with the different programs. The smaller program, we think that staff should be able to make the decision. The larger program comes back to the board. In terms of releasing the RFPs and finalizing them, we'd like that to be something the staff can do.
It may, Rob, it may be for me, my lack of just memory or understanding of what these programs are. I feel very much in a mist of cloud, like a cloud bank here. I don't know what I'm approving.
Sure. So the first program, the broadband financing program, it was an appropriation that was made in 2021 or fiscal year 2021 to the Department of Public Service, but now it's been transferred to us. It's $1.5 million to be awarded as grants to communication union districts. It's not open to other providers. These grants shall be used to provide cash equity to secure loans to finance broadband projects, including the 10% of project costs required to secure financing through the Broadband Expansion Loan Program administered by the Vermont Economic Development Authority. Communications Union District may not receive more than $400,000 in awards under this appropriation.
So how would you as staff administer this? If we give you the green light and say, go forth and administer it at your discretion, how would you do that?
Sure, I have a draft RFP crafted, but it would require, would require information on the loan that they're applying for, like what do they need these funds for? Does it make a critical difference? Does it help them buy down the interest rate? Like, why is it necessary when it's true the CUDs do have funds right now? We would want to see the terms of the loan. We'd want to know why this is the best option for them. Why aren't they exploring other options? We would want to have a process that has a notification if they're ever late on a payment. We want to know. So it's where are holding them accountable. We want to see how this is going to move the issue further, how it's going to allow them to build more faster. Because frankly, we're getting at the point now, especially with delays in the BEAD program, where the CUDs may have to be considering the revenue bond market or the VITA loan or other financing to make sure construction keeps going. Because we don't know what the delay is going to be with the BEAD programs. That's one of the reasons why we're pushing this out right now, to start preparing for the financing side of things. So that's that program. We weren't thinking that was something to bring before the board, to have them justify to the board where they decided to go for financing with what financial institution, how it's all important. We thought that's pretty clear cut. We also do have Adam on staff now with his financial background, Christine's financial background. We feel we're well equipped to do that and not burden the board with a smaller grant program such as this. The second program, it's the Community Broadband Public-Private Partnership Challenge. This is Northern Borders. We are looking at administering it, requiring universal service plan. It must be within a universal service plan. They must make the case that these funds are going to help further that plan or remove things that are blocking the completion of the plan. There are various things that have happened in the state. Look at the checkerboard for RDOF, for instance, that make it a little bit more challenging to complete the plan. This might allow for some innovative partnerships in terms of that. It could allow for innovative partnerships in terms of actually constructing the networks. Like, this is a chance to be creative and convince the board that this award could come to them. I also just noticed an earn here. It's 1.2 million. It's not 1.25 million. So.
And would Northern Borders Regional Commission have management of these grant dollars, the 1.2 million?
Have managed, these are grants that were given to the Public Service Department and transferred to the VCBB.
So
But
the VCBB staff would oversee the grants to make sure they're being spent appropriately?
Yes.
They're not buying helicopters and Ferrari, things of that nature?
We'll certainly avoid the Ferraris.
Exactly. Laura and Dan, do you have questions?
I do.
Go ahead, Laura.
So I understand what these programs are. I appreciate Patty's comment earlier about not having a sense of what we're doing. I think I understand them because I was pretty involved with their creation. We do want to leave a good path behind us. So as we are adding staff and getting further on down the road, and now starting to add additional financing pieces and the capacity to do other things, I would not advocate for the board getting involved in the nitty gritty, but I would advocate for the staff increasing the amount of kind of high level communication around these programs. So for instance, I think it would be great to have a one-sheeter, just suggesting, maybe we now have a communications person on each of these that was easily understood by the staff, by the CUDs, not by the staff, by the board. I do think it's important for the board to know what's going on. Not to the smallest detail, but to have a good grasp of what's going on, to be able to point to. In terms of the small grants and not having the board be involved in those, I'm fine with that, I guess, with us not making those grant decisions. I certainly don't want the board to be completely out of the loop on that. At a minimum, I would like us to have the criteria by which grants will be made, who will be making the decisions, a copy of the application, and then I'd like us to hear about who's won the awards. One of the most painful things I can think of to do is design by committee. And I have worked for boards before, so I really do not want to see us micromanaging. But making sure that the board is well informed. I don't think you have a micromanaging board. Perhaps I'm unable to see that. Maybe Dan just rolled his eyes.
No,
Laura, I appreciate your recommendation, actually.
there's stuff going on here.
Yeah, Laura, I appreciate your recommendation. And I think it's a great idea for, Heron to work with staff to figure out how to keep the board better informed of progress.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that suggestion.
Thank you, Christine. And I really don't want to create a lot more work for the board. I would recommend, or for the staff, I would recommend it be something that is suitable for public, that you could post, here is what this RFP is, so for dummies, as I like to call it in committee. Where it came from, very easy, one page, just something that's easy. And the small grants, Patty, I would like us to be clear about our expectation on that. I've expressed my thoughts about what I would like. I'm happy to be overruled on that, but I would like us to at least have a sense of when there'll be, like a timeline, the criteria, and then who will be making the decisions. And then I'd like us to hear about who was awarded,
Yeah, with that a little bit more flesh on the bones, that gives me the assurance that the funds that are going to be allocated out, they might not be giant to each CUD, but there's enough money there on the table that we want to make sure that those funds are used and used appropriately. So the comment about the criteria as to how the grants will be evaluated and how they will be used by the recipient, I think is really helpful. And some sort of assurance that there's oversight and management. And I'm happy to say, yeah, let's go forth and do it, staff.
Yeah. And that we can explain it out in the public,
Exactly.
because we have political roles. So we have people that we need to explain things to. So just so that we're fluent, I think would be helpful.
Well, I'm so excited to have Heron on staff because she will be getting this all together for our website as well as our other programs to make things a little bit more bite-sized. But yeah, we certainly want to keep the board informed, make sure the public knows everything that's related to the program. In the board packet, there is the draft RFP for the finance program, the smaller one. The other one, it was just too much of a lift to have ready before the board meeting.
Yeah, let me add too that I do not expect the board to read through RFPs, and I think that's what we'll do. We've been, obviously we have an increase in staff here, and it gives us the opportunity to summarize these things in a way that you can understand.
But Christine, I would like to have access to it. I
Oh
appreciate
yeah, no,
the cliff notes and the actual document.
Yep, you've got the document. Yep. We will keep everything available to you. You just want to make sure that we're not, burdening you with the requirement to read through all these things.
Right. We just felt that these were different than the other RFPs we've done that were for the tens of hundreds of millions of dollars programs, and we're at a different point now of an understanding between the board and the staff. So I wanted to provide the option rather than going through another 20-page, 30-page RFP.
I concur. If you don't mind me, Patty, I'll just object here. I concur with most of what's said. It's limited to $400,000 per CUD. I think it should be handled at the staff level, and for the board to be micromanaging is not effective. I don't think we try not to, and I concur with what Laura has said.
Okay, are we ready to put a motion on the table, or do you want to see something in advance before we take action on this?
Is it, are we looking for 2 motions, 3 motions?
I think
Well,
we should, I think we
yes.
should take action on each of these individually.
Yeah,
That's
Rob, why don't you recommend the motion? They are two separate motions. One is, one is for the smaller grant program. I'm not sure you need a motion on the other one because we're going to bring that to you anyway. But Rob, go ahead.
Sure. So we're looking for a motion to authorize the staff to finalize and release the RFPs for programs without further review from the board. Staff will provide the board and the public with a one-page document on each program. So that's the first motion. I'll break it down into the RFP and the decision-making process.
Okay, so I would love to have that 1 pager before we vote on it. So is that over the top now? Is that too much? For what are we meeting in 2 weeks?
Yeah, I don't know. What do you think, Rob?
I'd prefer if we could move forward with the broadband financing program because the entire RFP is already in the board packet and we know there's interest in accessing that very soon. I'm fine waiting for if we want to wait for a 1 page on the next one, that's fine as well, since that's a little bit further out.
Okay. Great.
So you're fine waiting on both, Rob?
I'd prefer not to wait on the broadband financing program, the smaller
Okay.
of the two. I would like permission to
Okay.
finalize the RFP and release it. For the other one, I'm probably not going to get it completed in the next 2 weeks anyway, so there's no reason why not to do it the same way, where we'll do a 1-page summary.
Okay.
And we
first.
don't have the RFP draft for that one anyway.
Right,
So,
exactly.
Right.
So there's time.
Yeah, I mean, I really, so again, I don't want, I think we should always have at least a 1 pager of what the program is or something that you're putting out. I mean, this is what we're thinking. Here's the bullet points. I don't think we should be giving, just saying, yes, go do that. So I'm happy to move forward with the one that we have in today. But this is the one that we're going to want to see the criteria, right? Rob, is this the one that I was saying we're going to want to see the criteria and understand who's making the process for making determinations?
On the financing program,
Yeah,
the smaller ones, I think it was going to be a staff decision, and it was going to
Yeah, and we're going to
involve-
prepare a 1 page. We're going to prepare a report that talks about what grants are made, how the decisions were made, the timeline, the criteria for making the decisions.
okay.
So that would be the reporting component of it.
Yeah, a lot of that's spelled out in the RFP already, but I will be adding more detail based on this conversation of maybe clarifying which staff are going to be involved in making the decision, for instance. But the questions that we're asking were starting to be fleshed out in the draft RFP. The second program is the one that's going to take a lot more to realize. Like we have a 1-paragraph summary of it right now, but that's where we're at. So that one I'm fine coming back with a 1-pager and the RFP, hopefully at the next board meeting, but it might take a little longer.
Yeah, I mean, I think that just to continue to kind of beat on this a little bit, I think that is the appropriate level for the board to be involved in, kind of the conceptually. So I don't think we should move forward with that until you come back with that.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Okay,
So let's not worry about that second program now. We'll just focus on the first program where we have a draft RFP. It's straightforward and just want permission to be able to authorize that. We'll provide a 1-page to the board, and we will notify the board of any awards as they are made.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I think I'll just, if I might, just to kind of add a little bit more context here. So in reflection on the BEAD application that went in, which required a tremendous amount of coordination with a tremendous amount of partners. On reflection, I'm disappointed that we were not one of the coordinating partners, the board itself, prior to that going in terms of the level of specificity that others had. And so that's kind of where I'm coming from with all of this. I'd like to just make sure that we have the big picture pieces before we're saying, great, go. And, I can speak for myself in saying, I have zero time to get in your business. I just don't want to be surprised. So,
Yep, got it. And I think we've got the structure and staff to do that, so appreciate your feedback.
Okay, did you make a motion on the broadband financing program?
I didn't.
All right, Laura, Dan, do you want to make a motion?
Oh, you're muted, Dan.
I said, go, Laura.
That's funny.
To make the cranky one do it. Okay. And so the motion is going to be to authorize the staff to finalize and release. Which one? The broadband financing program RFP. Is that the one, Rob?
Yes, he said yes, but you're on mute too, Rob.
Yes, that is the one.
Okay. And to authorize the staff to finalize and release the RFP for the broadband financing program and to follow up with a one-sheeter for the board on the criteria and decision-making process.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
A second.
Okay, any further discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? The ayes carry.
So then
Thank you.
the second motion is delegating the power to the staff to decide on grant awards under the broadband financing program and to subsequently report those awards back to the board.
I would like to receive the one-sheeter before we delegate that power. And since you haven't released the RFP and you don't have the grants coming in, I bet you it's okay for us to do that next meeting. Yes? Or does it bind you up in some way?
Oh, there's a chance we might be coming to you with a proposal from a CUD to be able to do it at the next meeting if it isn't given to the staff at this point.
Well,
So-
wait, Rob, I think you might be talking about two different things here.
Okay,
You
maybe I'm
got-
confused. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
you just got the motion for the
Yep.
first program, and that's approved. Now we're talking about the second program,
No,
the
no,
1.25 million.
no, Christine, we're not. We're still talking about the first one.
We weren't delegated the authority in that first one?
We were
Just
delegated
for the
the
RFP.
just for the RFP. We're
Oh,
asking
I
for the
see.
authority to make decisions on that. I think there is a potential that we will have one request coming in before then, based on where I know various CUDs are at in their application to USDA. So if we don't have the power, we would bring it to the board, which could be fine, but it is something that's just going to take a little more board time. It's really not we'll make it work either way.
Well, so I am happy to make a motion to, so let me just start by saying, I don't love this. Next time I would prefer to have the criteria and the process presented to us along with the request for the authority. I'm willing to make a motion. I don't know if Patty, if this works. I'm willing to make a motion to delegate that authority, provided we receive the criteria and the decision-making matrix, prior to the RFP going out. Yes, prior to the RFP going out, so that we, I just don't want to be caught, flat-footed here.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm happy to
have
go through parts
to-
of that RFP right now if that
Yeah,
makes you more comfortable, but
So time out, Rob. We've
Sure.
already made a motion and voted on the RFP going out.
Yeah.
The RFP failed, okay?
Right.
Unless we're gonna rescind that. I don't propose we rescind that. Send the RFP out.
Yep.
In terms of evaluating the grants, I think we should hold off. Staff, give us a one pager, and then you're gonna get the blessing that you administer under this one pager, hands off, away we go. And it's non-controversial at that point. And
Sure.
if you get somebody that has asked for a grant request before our next meeting, then they'll just have to hold.
okay. Yeah, that's not a problem. It should still be within the deadlines for the programs. So, yep.
Okay. That just makes it a whole lot cleaner.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. And we'll come back with the one pagers for both programs and then ask about the same thing for the second program for
Okay.
releasing the actual RFP. Not a
Super.
problem. Thank you.
It's always great to empower us to give you the authority. And the way you empower us is to say, this is how we're going to do it with some, whatever, a matrix of checks, just give us the information of how you're going to run the thing. And we're happy to say, go forth and do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, thanks.
Perfect. Thank you.
Appreciate the clarity.
Thank you very much. Okay, we are on to number 6, multi-dwelling unit policy, presentation and discussion.
Yeah, this is a carryover for the last meeting. We talked about a piece of important legislation that we would like to propose. And Stan's going to provide you with the details behind the why and the where and the how. Go ahead, Stan.
Thank you. I'm just having a little issue pulling up. Well, in your packet, there was a memo discussing the issue for multi-dwelling units. They raised several issues regarding broadband service.
Yeah, I'll be glad to pull that up for you if you'd like.
I pulled together a slideshow.
Oh, okay. I don't have that.
And that's what I'm trying to pull up, but it's not.
Rob, do you have that slideshow?
I do not.
Why don't you email
Stan
it?
has it. Stan has it.
There
That's
you
good.
go. Okay, perfect.
Is that up?
Yep, that's good. You got it. Good job.
Okay, great.
Just go to slideshow mode.
All right, we'll just have to do it this way. I'm technically challenged here. So, there are obstacles to MDU stands for multi-dwelling units, which can be apartment buildings, condos, trailer park groups, ski units, any sorts of buildings where there are several, residents that live in either one building or one complex. And there are special obstacles to obtaining broadband service in those MDUs, often because it involves the owners, the ISPs, and the residents. There have been in the past some specific anti-competitive practices that MDU owners enter into with the ISPs, including revenue sharing agreements, exclusive wiring agreements, and exclusive marketing agreements, some at rates above the going market rate, and they limit choices for the residents to obtain broadband service as well. The MDU owners can prohibit or impede access to the MDU residents if they want to get service from a competing ISP. Finally, MDUs often don't have infrastructure, conduit or other infrastructure that allows broadband to be delivered easily to the residents. So the FCC has recently taken action that bans certain revenue sharing agreements and requires providers to clearly disclose any marketing practices to tenants of MDUs. But that statement from early 2022 doesn't cover all issues regarding MDUs, so certain states have taken legislative action as well. Connecticut enacted legislation in 2021 that any ISP would have the same right of access to an occupied building afforded to any telecom service provider. And it also requires new MDUs of 3 units or more to have minimum infrastructure requirements to support broadband access. Similarly, Illinois enacted a law in 2021 that prohibits interference from an MDU owner with the rights of a resident to receive broadband service. There are some restrictions. They can require payment and require coming at certain hours, but they cannot prohibit an ISP from entering into a unit. So these state actions give guidance for Vermont to consider in any sort of legislative action that Vermont may want to take. And we recommend that the legislature include prohibiting anti-competitive activity, ensuring rights of access to MDUs for competing ISPs, and requiring broadband infrastructure to be included in new MDU construction.
So that last slide was the recommendation of what you want to pull that slide up again.
Oh, sure,
Dan?
sure.
Yeah, sorry. Just because I want to. So this is what we're looking for support from the board on. I don't necessarily think we need a motion on it, but what we're proposing is going into the legislature and asking for this type of language. So I'd love to hear your thoughts. And I think Laura has her hand up.
Yeah, go ahead, Laura.
Yep. So since we are an organization that its purpose is to support the CUDs, is this something that is coming from the CUDs?
Yes, the CUDs have raised this concern. It's actually, yeah, it's a concern. It's a universal concern, meaning it's happening all across the country, but it also impacts our CUDs.
Well, so I think for us, it would just be, does it impact our CUDs?
Yes, it does.
Is it a priority for our CUDs, not whether or not it's happening elsewhere? And so the reason that I raise that is, I think it's really important for the VCBB and VCUDA to make sure that they are aligned and speaking together on any type of legislative priorities. It would be, I think, from my opinion, a complete failure for the VCBB to bring forward legislation that was not supported by the CUDs. And so I would love to hear these types of presentations brought forward by the CUDs, understanding, who would be making this, who will be bringing this forward. If it would be the CUDs themselves, if it will be the VCBB. So those are my questions.
Yeah, let me just say in Act 71, it requests that the VCBB bring forward legislative suggestions. So we're following up on that language of Act 71. I also will say that Act 71 talks about universal service for the entire state, not just the CUDs.
Yes, but as we've discussed multiple times, that is not the goal of the VCBB.
Well, it's the goal of the state.
That is not the goal of the VCBB. And, I expect that this will be something we'll discuss more at our organizational meeting. But I'm happy to take it up now if the chair would like to entertain it.
Unless I'm told otherwise, we'll talk about this organizational meeting. There's a hierarchy here. And if we have to conform to that hierarchy, we can't, we have to conform to what Act 71 says. But we'll have Stan weigh in on that at the organizational meeting.
Yes, and as one of the primary authors of Act 71, I'm quite aware of the intent of the language.
Our goal stands right now as a staff to provide universal service to the residents of the state of Vermont. If the board tells us otherwise in a majority vote, then we'll certainly, but the board will have to do that in a majority vote.
Christine, I think what you're hearing is universal service is part of the goal, but there's also other elements of the goal.
Of course, it's part of the goal, but I'm saying it's not CUD's exclusive. It's not exclusive of the rest of the state. It's inclusive, not exclusive.
No. So this does sound, Patty, I do think that this is something that there has emerged some difference of opinion, and there really should not be any space between the board and the staff on this. So I don't know.
I think there may be differences on the board as well, Laura. So that needs to be discussed.
Why don't we move this to the organizational meeting and we can talk more to get us to coalesce around a directive of Act 71 that we all understand, rather than do it right now. With 3 board members, we don't have the full group, and let's do that at the organizational meeting.
And just to put my, thoughts on this, I'm happy to work with Fukuda to identify any areas where, I assume that we are fairly aligned in our policy and, where we want legislation to go. So we can set up, a bi-weekly call with Fukuda staff, with Rob or others there to make sure that we're in agreement on. But if there do come some issues where we're not, then we'll bring those to the board for discussion.
On this topic of the multi-dwelling unit, can you frame how big of an issue this is? Like, is this a minor thing, like a handful of?
I think, frankly, multi-dwelling units are a very big issue in cities, of which Vermont does not have many. But there are, units, rural units or ski units in Vermont that do raise this issue as well. So I think it's not a minor issue, but it's probably not a major issue.
Yeah. I also should point out that this isn't just like multi-dwelling units, it's a wide term. So it could be condos, it could be a apartment building, low income or otherwise. It could also be a development built by a developer where the roads are private. So say you're having a subdivision. If they make agreements preventing any other providers from getting in there, it's anti-competitive and it's not moving us towards the state goal. It's also hurting the CUDs in those areas by eliminating a potential income source for them. So there's an equity side of this, as well as just making sure plans are sustainable going forward. So it touches all of the CUDs in different ways.
Yeah, and at the same time, I'm gonna play devil's advocate a little bit here. The state of Vermont is pretty high on regulation in terms of landlords and rules that require landlords comply with. Are we prepared to put another layer of legislation on landlords in a tight rental market already? I just want to understand the issue better in terms of how big is it, how many, do we have evidence that this is really occurring in Vermont? Could it work?
We can get the numbers for you. We've definitely spoken to different telecom providers. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Can it work the other way where you can have an advantage to tenants where a landlord is negotiated to have a reduced rate compared to others? This is a bigger issue than just saying all landlords are bad. And I just want to.
Your point is taken, and in fact, in the memo, I do talk about a type of situation where there is universal service at a reduced rate, which does occur in Vermont, and that we propose that at this time that legislation not be raised to address that issue, because while it may raise some anti-competitive issues, the benefits to the people in those multi-dwelling units are higher because they're getting service at a reduced rate included in their rent, basically.
And let me also say, I've been meeting with I meet, every other week through housing and urban development, different housing groups. This issue comes up consistently with every housing group I meet with, because what happens is they do an exclusive deal, and then, there's not the providers, and I won't get into it publicly here from a technical standpoint, but because there's not adequate capacity coming into these buildings, what happened, and it really impacts low-income residents most primarily, where kids come home from school and they just don't have enough bandwidth to do their work. So this is, I can get a letter from the housing agencies stating their concerns over this.
I think this problem is real. When you bookend it with trailer mobile home parks and luxurious condos, I don't know the degree of the situation. I recognize it through Chittenden County and other very rural areas. So I would appreciate being educated a little bit more on it to understand the degree of this complexities and to the extent that this is really happening. And then, as Patty said, putting more on landlords may not be the right answer, but for new I don't know. I don't want to make any more comments. I just think to understand it more thoroughly before any decisions are made would probably be very wise, or recommendations, excuse me, are made to the legislature. I don't feel I understand it well enough, and I could argue both sides at this moment.
So, okay, Laura, do you have questions or comments?
Is my hand? Oh, my hand is still up. No, I think I said what I said. Just in terms of all policies, for us, I think it's imperative for us. Our legislative requests. It's imperative for the board to have a sense of the agreement that the CUDs have in their plan for moving this in the State House. That's not something, as a legislator, I would like to advise that we leave to chance, that, you know, we don't know what each other's doing. And also, it should be the same action.
It's a great point, Laura.
Thank you.
Christine, if you can add that to your list to follow
Yep.
up on, characterize
No problem.
the,
Got it.
the scale, the volume, some data on this as to what exactly we're looking at in terms of numbers. And also VCUDA's position on it as well.
Yeah, and Patty, just to, maybe this will be helpful also. We just need to remember that the CUDs are made up of individuals from every town virtually in the state. And so their lobbying effort will far surpass the VCBBs. So we will be on a fool's errand, moving legislation that is not aligned with their priorities and needs, as they will have a lot of legislators that they will be having good relationships with.
Excellent point. Okay, more to come on this topic.
More to come. Thank you.
Okay, anything else on multi-dwelling units?
Not at this meeting.
Okay. All right, let's move on to number 7, VCUDA update.
All right, am I on there? Great. Good afternoon, everyone. Another busy 2 weeks, I'm sure. And, you know, I want to highlight just kind of two things from VCUDA's perspective since last time we met. There are a number of questions you all asked us about legislation and policy last time, and we've made some good progress on that. But we're not quite ready to give you answers. We have a couple more folks to coordinate with before we do that. But I will highlight just kind of at a high level a couple of things that are happening in the Legislation Policy Committee and an outgrowth of that in our Make Ready working group that's just getting together. And then, you know, two other housekeeping items. One, we're still working on our budget. There are a number of things that are coming together where VCUDA, I think, believes that there's some things we could work on together that might be more efficient to do as a group. And so we're trying to kind of figure out whether or not the current model of very minimalist subscription fees from the CUDs into VCUDA is right, or in fact, whether folks want to expand that a little bit. And I expect that will play out in our discussions in upcoming meetings. We also had an excellent presentation 2 weeks ago by Equal Access to Broadband and talking about kind of the adoption side and direct assistance and how important that is to what we're all doing. And so there's just a couple of things that are happening in the background. In terms of, you know, the follow-up to last meeting, we have formed a legislative and policy working group. And, you know, the group brainstormed much like you would expect a long list of items, I'd say 3 handfuls worth of items for discussion. And ultimately, we sorted through them. A lot of them are really educational items or policy items that we need clarification on. And I think, you know, our intention is to do some outreach and to have some conversations with VCBB about many of those items. And I don't think they're, at the moment, they do not appear to be legislative items. There's a small number of items that are on folks' lists. And again, once we have a couple more coordination meetings, we'll share those with you. They are not right now related to major changes to Act 71. They're more in the kind of clarification of what a CUD is and how it operates kind of activities. But that's where we are right now. Again, more conversations to play. For the most part, I think the legislative group, the legislative activities are going to be pretty small that we're recommending. One thing that came out of it was a very robust discussion about make ready and kind of where the CUDs are in terms of the rubber meeting the road now that a number of construction grants have gone out. The first batch of applications have come back, and kind of folks are trying to get closer and closer to licensing. And, I would say that what the group wanted me to convey here was that in addition to the pole availability issue, which is still real in some of the CUDs, we're seeing some unevenness in kind of availability and timeliness of some of the make-ready licenses and bills that are coming in. And that's not, that is normal as these processes play out in other jurisdictions around the country. And, there is definitely a learning curve in terms of managing those. We're putting a working group together to share best practices across the CUDs and figure out kind of what the most efficient and best approach to managing those are. But, just as one example, one of the CUDs mentioned, just kind of anecdotally, I got 35 miles that I can go build right now, but I want to ramp up to be able to do hundreds. And, that's kind of the process. The question is, when are they going to get, big enough chunks that they can make progress? And, how much of this is related to resourcing versus sequencing versus management of those activities. So working groups coming together, that's an important issue. I expect we'll continue to talk about that in future meetings. Okay. I think that's probably it for today.
Okay, Laura, you have your hand up.
Rob, thank you. Great summary. I don't know if you were around for our previous discussion, but we have been discussing where VCBB is going to be in terms of legislative requests and the CUDs. So I would just encourage, I don't know what kind of updating is happening. I'm not really deep in the weeds between Christine and Rob and the CUDs, but I would just encourage that as your working group is working, that you loop in the staff at VCBB. I think that's really important that they're aware of anything that is rising to the top.
We have some upcoming conversations, Laura. That's one of the pieces that still has to get tied out before we put our recommendations together. So we're looking forward to that.
Yeah, and I will say it again, I think it would be an absolute failure for the CUDs and VCBB to be at cross purposes in the legislature. And I will do all of the things that I can do to avoid that happening.
Yeah, very good.
For all of our benefits.
So Rob, it would be great if you had the multi-dwelling unit issue on your plate for things to consider. We definitely would want to make sure that we're in sync on that. And if we're not, we want to be aware of that. And as Laura said, it would be a tragedy if we were coming at opposite angles on a particular item.
Yeah, it absolutely is on the list. And again, I think we've got to get a chance. We've got a couple meetings coming up where we'll get a chance to kind of sync in terms of prioritization and where on the list it goes. But it is on our list. Okay,
perfect. And if the CUDs and you have a sense of the scale of this issue, how big is it? I don't have a taste for, is this a giant issue, a little issue? I just really don't have a scale for it.
I personally don't have that data, and actually will look forward to hearing the data that Robin, Stan, and Christina collected in other forums to see if these may have some. So give us a chance to put that together.
Yeah, if you guys.
I agree with you. I mean, you know, just as it's funny. I started my my introduction to regulatory and legal issues in telecom was about multi-dwelling units 20 some odd years ago, and they are very serious issues, and they do. You know, absolutely leave people behind if you don't address them. And so I think that, you know, the whole spirit of what we're trying to do here requires us to find solutions for multi-dwelling units and trailer parks and, you know, whatever private properties. I absolutely agree with that. I think how we approach that and what the right solution are the thing that we've got to work through in terms of what's right for this year and what's right for next year and those kinds of things. It's really a priority issue. It has to be on the list of things to get dealt with.
Well said. Thank you. All right. Any other questions of Rob? Thank you very much, Rob. We very much appreciate it. Okay, next item, public comment.
Okay, if anybody has public comments, please raise your hand. Going once, going twice. I don't see any public comments at this time.
Okay. We are blazing through here. Next on our agenda is number 9, schedule and structure a board organizational meeting for November.
Yeah, this is really, you know, we'll reach out to the other 2 board members, but like to find out what would work for you. Couple questions, you know, do you want this to be an in-person meeting? And I know that, you know, my previous job, we hired outside facilitators to do this so that the board chair could be involved. If you would like us to bring in an outside facilitator, we can do that as well.
Yeah, Christine, I'm not anticipating we need that for this meeting. This is more about just, it's a check-in. It's an opportunity to check in after we've been together now for a year. And what I want to focus on is what's working and what's not working. Meeting frequency, I would really like to push us to go to once a month. So I'm thinking of a no more than a 2-hour meeting. You know, I'm mindful of everyone's time, and I think that we can accomplish a lot with a very, you know, crisp agenda, couple hours. We can add the goal of VCB to this to get a little bit more, maybe a little bit more entertainment and flavor. But I'm really looking at basically a structural organization to check in to say what's working and what's not, what can we do better in terms of process. And I'd be looking for this to be board members present, staff present. It's obviously a public meeting, so it has to be open. But the focus of this meeting is really on the process of how we are running. If we can do things better and focus on what's really working. I think we have some things to cheer ourselves on about, but I also want to get a sense of if there's things we can do better.
Okay. So I guess it's just a matter of schedule.
Right. So our next regular VCBB meeting is October 31st. Happy Halloween. And what I'd like to look at is if it's possible to do like the 7th, do the next Monday.
Yeah, I'd like, it'd be nice if we could stay away from that. I'm going to be on vacation, but if I have to, I'll call in from South Lake Tahoe.
So, Christine, probably the better thing to do rather than try to do this with the 3 of us is send out a doodle poll and see what works. Put your schedule in there so that we're not trying to do this on the fly.
All right. Do you want to come up with a? I guess we could share with the board what kind of questions the board wants to ask as well. You know, by board
agenda.
member. Yeah, to come up with an agenda.
Right. Christine, I think you and I can work on that and we'll put that forward. But just for Dan and Laura, for your standpoint, the focus really is on emphasizing what we're doing right, what's working, And then what are the things that we can look at that we want to do better and improve on? It's really an organizational structure. It's not meant to get into a whole bunch of policy level discussion. We can add, if we have time, the goals of VCBB and talk about that. Maybe reserve a half-hour slot.
That feels pretty big, Patty. I mean, like, why are we here feels like pretty big.
Yeah.
Maybe if we
right.
don't agree. Huh?
Maybe that is not right to add that topic, that item to this organizational meeting.
I think it could fit. If it doesn't, then we just parking lot some of those items.
If we have time, we'll dive in. If not, what I'm really trying to do is get to the essence of how are we doing as a group? What things can we improve on and process? And if we limit it to those items, then we'll really focus on that. And then, we can save the bigger items to chew on for other meetings.
I mean, I'm fine with that, but when and if I see conflicts with what the purpose of Act 71 is, I will be bringing attention to that. So, as I have been.
Understood.
Yeah, and I guess the question is really on that. I believe I know board members have difference of opinions on this, Laura. So I'm trying to represent the board. You're representing that the board's unified on this. I don't believe they are unified on this. So I think that does need discussion, and it needs some legal interpretation, which maybe, come from Stan, or it could come from another party.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to ask Ledge Council to draft a memo about the intent of Act 71 and the board in Act 71. Or Christine can ask for, well, they probably won't give it to you, but I think that would be.
Yeah, it's a question of what universal service means. I admit there's confusion in the language because it talks about, but we're interpreting universal service to be for all Vermonters, including non-CUDs right now. That's the staff interpretation. And that's where I think, Laura, you've offered a different opinion, which I think we do need to resolve that, because
yes,
I don't want to be out of alignment with the board, which I'm not sure the board agrees with that.
Yes, and I'm not sure that the legislation agrees with requiring, the VCBB's job being to ensure universal service.
Okay.
In fact, I'm sure that it does not.
Okay. And if it doesn't, of course, we'll change our position. And that will certainly influence the decision of the board for sure. But I do know there are individual board members who think differently on this.
And so I think
it makes
the
it tough
question
for
is,
us as a staff.
the question is, what would be most helpful? Would it be helpful to have a memo from Ledge Council? They may not completely agree with what I'm saying, but for them to explain what the intent is of the VCBB.
Yeah, and I think at that point it would be helpful to have a board vote on supporting what that means. I think the board ultimately, if Ledge Council interprets it to mean that we're focused, this is only for an example, so don't go there. I don't think there's a polarity discussion, but should Ledge Council note your job is to focus solely on the CUDs? Well, that's pretty clear, right? But I doubt we're going to get that level of clarity. So I think it will need a board discussion.
Yeah. And Laura, I'm just curious, if I may. So if our responsibility is only to support the CUDs, whose responsibility is it for areas that are not in CUDs, since broadband is no longer within the purview of the connectivity division? I'm just going where did that go, or who should we talk to?
Shall I read the purpose of the VCBB?
Well, there's various places in there. We could read counterpoint, but there's different language in there, and it conflicts with itself.
That's the challenge.
There's places where it clearly states that it's universal service, and there's other places where it talks about community service.
And then it talks about providers working in non-CUD territories too. So it's just, there's the consistency isn't there to support either position, I don't feel like. That's where I'm coming at it from, at least.
So
And
it
with-
sounds
so-
like
so-
Ledge
so with any-
Council memo would be helpful for
Yes.
staff.
I believe it would.
Yeah.
Or
So
would
with-
Ledge Council be willing to speak to the board and take questions?
I don't know if that's appropriate, but I will certainly ask.
All right,
Christine can
so-
ask, you know. or Patty
So
can ask.
this is a topic that we're going to have to wade in on, and it requires us all to revisit Act 71, read the document read the legislation in its entirety. We're not prepared to do that today.
Right, of course.
And when you pull apart a document and say, oh, it says this here and it says that there, you have to look at the document body of legislation in its entirety to really come out with what is the purpose of this legislation. And we can all read it a little differently. We can all take, I'm going to discourage us from taking an individual section and saying that's the single purpose. And I'm not prepared to, I haven't read Act 71 from front to end recently, but that's what it would require us to have this discussion. I'm just not prepared to do that today.
So wouldn't it be in our best interest to have that discussion at some point and then talk about how are we doing?
I mean, it feels like a really important distinction to me.
Yeah, I'm coming around to the way you view that, is that if we spend some time on that and get clear and then have a conversation about how are we doing in those, the mechanics, that would be a great use of an afternoon.
Yeah, I mean, there's a pretty big difference between it's Christine's job to make sure every Vermonter has broadband, high-speed broadband, or it's Christine's job to make sure that all of the CUDs have all of the tools and resources available to ensure that everyone in their CUD is able to meet the requirements of the state plan, which is what I believe the legislation says. So there's a big difference in what we expect of Christine in those two different interpretations.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there is. And you know, I'd like to get this resolved as well. Clarity is good.
I still contend that the organizational meeting is important, and this really is housekeeping stuff. How are the packets? How frequent should we be meeting? How is Teams going? That kind of stuff. We can stay way away from the policy. It's really just honing in on process. Public comment, should we have it in the beginning or the end? This is administrative, structural. How are the meetings running? Content, that kind of stuff. I would like to push this goal and policy stuff to another meeting, but I think it's important for us to have some housekeeping stuff. So that's what this organizational meeting really is about. Like, for example, we are spending 2 4-hour sessions every month dealing with VCBB stuff. We have board members that can't spend 4 hours. I have to go and excuse myself because I've got something happening, another meeting, or, Laura has legislative stuff. 4 hours is a lot of time. And I want to improve this process so that we can be more present. And when we're having the meeting, it's very crisp. We move through things very quickly. If we're empowered with the data that we need, we can go really quickly through items instead of hanging them up. Staff, we're still getting a feel of what this give and take is between what is necessary to make decisions with the group and what we can empower staff with. And this is an opportunity to sit down and do some housekeeping so we can proceed in a little bit more streamlined fashion. That's really it. All right, so Christine, you're going to send out some timeframes, and we will get a meeting on the calendar, and we'll meet at that point.
Yep, got it.
Excellent. All right, next meeting, regular meeting is October 31st. And with that, I'm going to put a motion on the table to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Excellent. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor to adjourn, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you very much, everybody. Great meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, see you in a couple weeks.
Thank you.